Level 1. Friendly competition. Lando Norris versus Carlos Sainz. When McLaren paired Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz in 2019, fans didn't expect a friendship that would steal the spotlight from the front-runners. Their chemistry was effortless. Off-track, they joked through interviews, pranked engineers, and turned McLaren's media days into a comedy routine. But behind that energy was a serious partnership that helped revive a struggling team. Sainz brought experience, Norris brought raw speed, and together they built trust that made communication seamless on and off the radio. The results followed. McLaren finished fourth in 2019 and climbed to third in 2020, their best standing in nearly a decade. Their light-hearted rivalry showed that teammates could push each other without bitterness, and that success didn't need tension to feel real. Their dynamic worked because each understood their place. Sainz mentored without ego, Norris learned without resentment, and McLaren benefited from a morale boost unseen since the Button-Hamilton era. They battled for track position at times, Austria 2020 being a standout, but always raced with respect. Even when Sainz announced his Ferrari move, there was no public friction. Their final race together in Abu Dhabi 2020 ended with a handshake and a laugh, closing an era that made fans care about McLaren again. Their rivalry was friendly, but meaningful. Level 2. Healthy heat. Max Verstappen versus Charles Leclerc. Long before they ever touched an F1 car, Verstappen and Leclerc were already sizing each other up in karting paddocks, trading victories and grudges before they could even drive road cars. That tension followed them to Formula One, and by Austria 2019, it exploded onto the world stage. Leclerc was leading comfortably for Ferrari until Verstappen came charging through with 3 laps to go. Late on the brakes, elbows out, no hesitation. They banged wheels, Leclerc went wide, and the stewards let it stand. From that moment, it was clear these two would define the sport's next chapter. Every time they lined up together, the air felt heavier, as if the entire grid knew something special was coming. By 2022, their duels had evolved into pure precision. In Bahrain and Jeddah, the two swapped the lead multiple times within laps, playing high-speed chess with DRS activations and crossovers that had commentators gasping. The beauty of it all was the respect. Neither needed to crash to prove a point. Verstappen's aggression met Leclerc's calm control, and the result was F1 at its finest. Even as Red Bull's dominance grew, Leclerc's performances stayed sharp enough to remind everyone he's still the one driver capable of truly matching Max on merit. Their rivalry is a rare kind, fierce, clean, and grounded in mutual respect. They don't need controversy to make headlines. The racing does it for them. George Russell versus Lando Norris. The new generation of British drivers brought fresh faces and sharper elbows, and nowhere is that clearer than between George Russell and Lando Norris. Both came up through the same junior ranks, both carry the Union Jack legacy, and both quietly believe they're next in line to inherit Hamilton's throne. When McLaren's upgrades transformed them into podium contenders in 2023, the Russell-Norris rivalry started simmering in public view. Their battle at Silverstone, door-to-door through Brooklands, summed up the dynamic perfectly. Ruthless precision from Russell, instinctive aggression from Norris, and no inch surrendered that didn't have to be. You could feel that these weren't just drivers fighting for position. They were fighting for hierarchy. Off-track, the rivalry wears a polite smile. They compliment each other in interviews, pose for sponsor photos, and occasionally joke on camera. But every glance carries competitive tension. Norris is the entertainer, emotional, outspoken, and quick to push boundaries, while Russell is the technician, calculating, measured, and quietly confident. Their contrasts make the rivalry compelling because both know their futures depend on outperforming the other. As Hamilton's generation edges closer to its sunset, these two are setting the stage for the next British chapter, one driven by respect, rivalry, and a shared hunger to be the country's number one. Level 3. Teammate tension. Esteban Ocon versus Fernando Alonso. When Alpine paired Esteban Ocon with Fernando Alonso, the team expected experience and youth to push each other forward. For a while, it worked. Ocon earned his first F1 win in Hungary 2021, with Alonso defending masterfully against Hamilton to protect it. But as time went on, the partnership cracked under competitive pressure. By 2022, both were fighting harder against each other than their actual rivals. Wheel-to-wheel duels turned into contact, and radio messages turned personal. Brazil's sprint race summed it up. Ocon squeezed Alonso off the track, Fernando clipped Ocon's car, and both blamed each other. The cameras caught everything, and the tone inside the team flipped from cooperative to corrosive overnight. Alonso's frustration became public, his radio full of sarcastic lines and open criticism. He accused Ocon of caring more about defending against him than racing anyone else. Ocon fired back by calling himself the better teammate, citing points totals and consistency. The atmosphere turned toxic fast. By the season's end, Alonso was out joining Aston Martin and leaving no doubt that Alpine's internal war had pushed him away. For Ocon, it was both a learning experience and a warning. The kind of rivalry that reminds everyone that sharing a garage with a former world champion can make or break your career. The tension they built in 2 seasons gave Alpine headlines, but at the cost of peace, unity and long-term stability. Level 4, Psychological Warfare, Nigel Mansell versus Nelson Piquet. Williams in the late 1980s was the fastest car in Formula One, and that meant the battle for control wasn't just on the track, it was inside the team. Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet were both world-class drivers with explosive egos and no interest in compromise. The partnership started with respect, but by 1986, it was war. Piquet, a 2-time champion, mocked Mansell publicly, calling him an uneducated blockhead and questioning his intelligence. Mansell fired back through performances, taking wins that forced Piquet to push harder. Their duels became unfiltered aggression. Silverstone, 1987, saw Mansell chase down Piquet with fresh tyres and pass him at 190 miles per hour in one of the greatest moves in F1 history. Inside the garage, engineers split into 2 camps, each loyal to a driver, while team principal Frank Williams struggled to control the chaos. Every race felt like a psychological brawl disguised as competition. Mansell's determination made him a national hero in Britain, while Piquet's sharp tongue and tactical mind made him the villain in the story. They refused to share credit, refused to back down, and by the end of 1987, Piquet's consistency gave him the title, while Mansell's crash in Japan ended his hopes. Even after leaving Williams, their rivalry lingered. Piquet would occasionally mock Mansell in interviews, and Mansell never hid how personal that feud had become. It was a rivalry built on pride, talent, and raw intensity, one that showed how 2 world-class drivers could turn the fastest car on the grid into a battlefield. Level 5, Team Civil Wars, Sebastian Vettel versus Mark Webber. Red Bull's golden era might have looked smooth from the outside, but inside the garage it was anything but calm. Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber shared the same car, the same ambitions, and zero patience for compromise. In 2010, the cracks showed early. At the Turkish Grand Prix, the 2 collided while fighting for the lead. Vettel's car spinning out, Webber limping home, and the team's perfect day turning into a public disaster. What followed was an uneasy piece patched together by team orders and PR smiles. Webber's growing resentment was clear in Silverstone that year when Vettel received a new front wing that had originally been fitted to Webber's car. After winning the race, Webber fired his famous jab over the radio. Not bad for a number 2 driver. It summed up everything about their dynamic. 2 teammates competing for the same glory under a team that clearly leaned toward one of them. By 2013, the tension had turned to open defiance. The Malaysian Grand Prix became the defining chapter of their rivalry. Red Bull told both drivers to hold position, codenamed Multi-21, with Webber leading. Vettel ignored it, attacked anyway, and stole the win. The post-race scene was icy. Webber refused to celebrate, and the tension between the 2 was visible to the world. From that day on, trust never returned. The engineers split into quiet factions, and the garage atmosphere grew toxic. Webber left Formula One at the end of that season, later admitting that the relationship had reached a point of no return. For Vettel, the controversy lingered as a permanent mark on an otherwise dominant chapter of his career. Red Bull may have been unstoppable on track, but inside its own walls, the battle between its drivers nearly tore it apart. Level 6. Modern hostility and political hate. Lewis Hamilton versus Max Verstappen. The 2021 Formula One season will always be remembered for one of the most intense rivalries in modern motorsport. Lewis Hamilton against Max Verstappen. From the first race in Bahrain, the tone was set. Hamilton's experience versus Verstappen's aggression. Every Grand Prix feeling like a heavyweight bout. By Silverstone, the tension finally cracked. On lap 1, Verstappen defended hard into Copse. Hamilton refused to yield, and contact sent the Red Bull flying into the barriers at 180 miles per hour. The crowd gasped. Verstappen went to the hospital for checks, and the stewards handed Hamilton a 10-second penalty, which he overcame to win the race. That moment split the fanbase worldwide and ignited a rivalry that went beyond the track. In Monza, the tables turned. Both cars collided again, this time with Verstappen's Red Bull landing on top of Hamilton's Mercedes. The visual said everything. These two were no longer racing with margins. They were fighting for supremacy. The drama reached its breaking point in Abu Dhabi. Hamilton dominated the finale until a late safety car reset the race. Race director Michael Massey's call to restart under controversial circumstances allowed Verstappen, on fresh tyres, to overtake on the final lap and clinch his first championship. The fallout was seismic. Mercedes protested, fans erupted online, and the FIA later restructured its race control procedures. The rivalry had outgrown the sport, turning social media into a battlefield between Hamilton's loyal fanbase and Verstappen's new army of supporters. In the seasons that followed, the direct duels decreased as Red Bull's performance soared, but the tension never disappeared. Every comment, every strategic remark still feels like an echo of that wild 2021 season. The Hamilton-Verstappen saga redefined modern Formula One, mixing sporting excellence with political chaos and reminding everyone how fragile the line between greatness and controversy can be. Level 7. Destructive rivalries. Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost. Few rivalries in Formula One history have carried the same intensity or legacy as Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. When they became teammates at McLaren in 1988, it was like pairing fire with ice. Senna was raw speed and emotion. Prost was calculation and control. Together, they dominated the sport, winning 15 of 16 races that season. But as the team's success grew, so did the cracks. Each believed he was the true leader of McLaren, and by 1989, the Cold War inside the garage had turned open. The flashpoint came at Suzuka. Senna needed a win to keep his title hopes alive, but when he tried to pass Prost at the chicane, they collided. Senna restarted, won the race, and was then disqualified for cutting the track. Prost took the championship and left McLaren immediately after, signing with Ferrari. 1 year later, Suzuka again became the battleground. This time, Senna had the upper hand. Starting from pole, he complained about the grid placement being unfairly angled toward the dirty side of the track. When the lights went out, Prost got the better start, but Senna stayed right behind him into turn 1. What followed became one of the most controversial moments in F1 history. Senna hit Prost at full speed, taking both cars out and sealing the championship in his favour. Many saw it as payback for the previous year. Senna described it as justice. The FIA condemned it, but fans were split forever. The two men carried that tension for years until finally reconciling in 1993, when Prost retired. Months before his death at Imola in 1994, Senna mentioned Prost fondly on live television. Their rivalry defined an era, two philosophies colliding at the peak of human performance, and even in death, their names remain inseparable. Michael Schumacher versus Jacques Villeneuve. The 1997 season built toward a single unforgettable clash: Michael Schumacher versus Jacques Villeneuve. Schumacher, already a double world champion with Benetton, had joined Ferrari in 1996 to rebuild the team into title contenders. Villeneuve, driving for Williams, was the rising force in only his second year of Formula One. The battle stayed close all season, with Schumacher entering the final race at Jerez 1 point ahead. What followed became one of F1's most controversial title deciders. On lap 48, Villeneuve dived down the inside at the hairpin, and Schumacher turned in aggressively, attempting to shut the door. The two collided, but only Schumacher's Ferrari ended up stranded in the gravel. Villeneuve continued to finish third, securing the championship, while Schumacher was later disqualified from the entire season for unsporting conduct. The incident stained Schumacher's reputation at a time when he was already known for ruthless competitiveness. The FIA's ruling didn't erase his talent, but it reinforced the perception of a win-at-all-costs mentality. Ferrari backed him publicly, but inside the paddock, the talk was about ethics more than engineering. For Villeneuve, the moment immortalized him, beating Schumacher head-to-head to claim the title that would define his career. In the years that followed, both men's paths diverged sharply. Schumacher went on to dominate the early 2000s, rewriting the record books, while Villeneuve never again reached the same heights. So, which of these rivalries do you think truly defined Formula One's identity? The passion, the politics, or the chaos? Comment down below. As you leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.